What's going on, squad? It's your man Unspoken Reviews back again with another video, and today we received a new teaser for the upcoming Avengers Doomsday. Okay, guys, I know this trailer came out last week, but I wanted to kind of structure my thoughts around what I wanted to talk about, so that way I was real clear about my position about everything, so that, just kind of give it some thought and have my feelings structured the proper way. All right, guys, so this new Doomsday trailer is centered around Thor, that's right, the God of Thunder is returning in Avengers Doomsday, played once again by the great Christian Hemsworth. He's always done a great job with this character. He's always killed it every single time. Ever since he first came to play the role back all the way in the first Thor film, he's just been pretty awesome. He's always done a great job by the character, and even he himself said he loves the character. So seeing him come back one more time for Avengers Doomsday, I'm glad to see he's returning. Coming back after the events of Love and Thunder, and that film was met with a bit of disgrace, okay? But before we talk about how much I hated that film, I do want to touch on some more about Chris Hemsworth playing Thor. The best thing about Thor as a character is when he first came to the MCU, he was very much the very serious tone character. Where he was from, the type of warrior he was, the way he was introduced to Midgard and Earth. He definitely was a fish out of water. And every film after that was kind of the same. And that is kind of the charm that worked for his character, right? He always was played for some comedic effect. And every single time that comedic effect came around, it was really kind of genuine, right? He wouldn't know certain type of euphemisms or metaphors or certain jokes that the characters would make. So he would sometimes say things that would make the audience laugh, but it worked because the charm was very genuine. It was very real. So it always made you laugh at the character. But then he would have his more badass moments. You like the events in Endgame or in the events of Infinity War, which is actually some of the best moments he's ever had. By Endgame, I really did like his character because he had somewhat of a traumatic event, and you really were able to relate to him as a character. Never mind that this is a god who's been alive for thousands of years. His response to failing to kill Thanos definitely made you understand what he was going through from his trauma. And this character has been through a lot, man. Losing his brother, losing his best friend, losing his entire world, losing all his friends, losing his mother and father. This guy is constantly losing everything. I love the moment in Infinity War when him and Rocket are talking, and Rocket is asking him if he's ready to face off against Thanos after everything he's lost. And, Thor doesn't trip on that. He even says, even if I lose, what else? If I fail, what else could I lose? You know what I mean? He was just willing to give everything he had to stop Thanos for everything that he had taken. When we got to Love and Thunder, I was very disappointed in how Taika Waititi handled his character, just consistently making him a parody joke, making him the butt of everyone's joke. It became a very female-led superhero film with Thor just kind of being there as the backup for jokes. It kind of reminded me of that recent Ghostbusters film where Chris Hemsworth played the secretary, and he was just kind of played for effect, for the females' quote-unquote fantasy. That's just kind of how Thor was treated in Love and Thunder. And there were just so many jokes in that film that just took away the gravitas of the character. And I'm glad to see with Avengers Doomsday, after everything he's been through, he's kind of getting back to that very straight and more serious tone. I need that from this character. After everything he's been through, I mean, I know he has Love, who he did take as his daughter after Gore did wish her back with Eternity. I'm excited to see how this as much has changed him as a character because when you're fighting as just a warrior with nothing to lose, you don't really get scared of how you make certain decisions. This is going to be different for Thor, as we know he's a warrior that's dedicated to the fight. But is this going to change how he operates as a warrior? You know what I mean? Seeing him kind of slow down, seeing him kind of understand what his decisions will wrought, it's going to kind of make me excited to see how his character grows. And I really do want to see him as a badass character. Is there a potential for him to die? Definitely. But we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. I mean, I'm pretty sure Doomsday is supposed to spell the end for a lot of these characters, which I definitely do hope because I still believe that bringing back some of these characters is all a desperate play for Marvel. Thor is the exception. So technically him being there does make certain sense, but everyone else still seems like a desperate play to me. So here in this teaser, we see Thor is kind of walking through the woods and he's kind of praying to the All-Father, Odin, his father, who has now passed and moved on to Valhalla, to a peaceful state. But we see Thor still prays out to him, and you can hear the thunder in the background, which means that Odin does still hear him, and I think that's pretty interesting. To see that despite the fact the differences in where they may stand, Odin is still somewhere listening and watching over his son, seeing everything and all the good that he's doing. That's pretty awesome. However, Thor is praying to him, realizing that this isn't a fight he can turn away from. He's realizing that Doom has become a credible threat, and he has to go off and fight this threat despite the fact that he wants to be home with his daughter. He knows exactly where he belongs at. And I'm very satisfied with that. I'm satisfied to see that he's still willing to make that sacrifice. But he does pray to hope that despite when the fight is over, let him come home less a warrior and once again a protector and warmth for his daughter. And I think that's pretty awesome. Just the dialogue coming out of his mouth just fits properly for the character. And I'm so glad that Marvel's getting back to that. They're recognizing the things that have worked before in the past and they're trying to adapt it. Thor is just that character. He needs to come off pretty badass. We see he does have Stormbreaker. He doesn't have Mjolnir. I do understand that Stormbreaker is a lot more powerful than Mjolnir as it can summon the Bifrost, and that's probably going to come in handy for the characters. I'm just excited to see where his character goes from here. This is going to be kind of very much a father-child themed movie. This is going to kind of be centered around Doom and probably the lives and children that he's lost. We know that Steve Rogers has a child himself. We know now that Thor has a child. We do know that Eden and Sue both have a child. And it's going to be kind of very parent themed. Pretty much what are these characters fighting for? That's going to be so much more personal that they got to take it to Doom, despite the fact that some of them have retired. All right, guys, so that was my feelings towards the new Thor Doomsday trailer. I'm excited to see this. I'm pretty sure we're going to get a full theme trailer by the Super Bowl, which is going to be pretty awesome. I think there are some rumors about it. If I know Marvel, more than likely they are going to do something on the Super Bowl. It just makes sense. This is going to be the biggest make or break film for Marvel. They really cannot fail this film. They really cannot. They have to fire off on all cylinders because if they screw this up, Marvel fans are going to be done. They're reaching into the bag and taking out all the desperate plays, the desperate writers, the desperate directors, the desperate actors that have passed on because they recognize they need this crew. And it probably wouldn't surprise me if we do get Natasha back sooner or later. I'm not saying I know that Scarlett Johansson says she was done, but hey, man, so did RDJ. But I hope you guys enjoyed the review, and I will catch you guys in the next.